U.S. Industries is CERV's founding program. It got started in 1962. Since that...
Thank you for that, and if you would, if it'd be possible, if you could send that to each member of the subcommittee here. I'd like to watch the entire thing. I did ask them to cut it off a little bit short today in the interest of time, and I apologize again for having to do that, but we've just got so much on our plate that we've got to, unfortunately. But if you would come up and tell us who you are and where you're from, and then make a brief presentation, we'd appreciate it.
Well, you saw the best part anyway. There weren't any jokes in the rest of the video, so... My name is Susan Collins. I'm the Executive Director of the Container Recycling Institute. And good afternoon, Chairman McCormick and members of the committee. It's great to be back in Nashville. I lived here for several years, and I'm always pleased to come back and see all the changes that have taken place. The Institute studies beverage container recycling around the U.S. and around the world, so I'm happy to answer questions that you might have on other beverage container recycling programs. Container deposits, as you may know, place a deposit on beverage containers to incentivize consumers to return the containers for recycling. They work remarkably well, achieving return rates of 70 to 95%. There are deposit laws in 11 U.S. states, 12 Canadian provinces, and 15 countries around the world. Beverage containers make up approximately 5% by weight of the waste stream, but about 15% by volume in our landfills because they're filled with air. And they're not so dense. I want to talk a little bit about economic growth and what it can bring to the state. About $50 million worth of scrap aluminum, plastic, and glass from beverage containers gets buried in Tennessee landfills every year. It's just being thrown away. That means that Tennesseans are also purchasing about $50 million worth of beverage containers that were sourced elsewhere every year from other states and other countries. If you don't choose to recycle these materials in Tennessee, that is the same as committing to purchase those materials from out of state and out of the country. And to add insult to injury, municipalities pay about $4 million a year to collect and dispose of those materials. And that money could also be saved through container deposit legislation. So good stewardship is not a foreign concept in Tennessee. Tennesseans don't want more garbage, and they don't want more litter. This potential law would open up possibilities for Tennessee, which is such a beautiful place, to take waste and turn it into an economic resource and a job creation device. This program, the way it's been written up here in Tennessee, would create jobs to create the recycling infrastructure that would be needed using the free market. It will create jobs, and these jobs are private sector jobs. Here's what this law isn't. A deposit is not a tax. People pay a deposit when they buy a keg of beer, for example, and they get the deposit back when they return the keg, and nobody calls that deposit a tax. This is the same thing, but for beverage containers. The deposit is returned to consumers in full when they return bottles and cans for recycling. About litter, there is no other type of recycling program that can reduce litter as well. Litter reduction is an enormous benefit of container deposit programs, and to the people who collect littered containers, it's like picking up money off the ground. But it's so much more than a litter reducing program. I also want to address something different, cross-border concerns that have been brought up by many people. It's a common concern. And what I mean by cross-border concerns is that there are concerns that people will cross the borders to make purchases in other states, or that people in other states will bring containers into Tennessee from out of state to get the redemption value. And of course, with any economic system, there will be some fraud of this type, just like people not filing tax returns or shoplifting in grocery stores. Whenever you create an economic system, there's a chance for people to skirt the law. But studies have shown that it's not an overwhelming number. It's about 2%. And the proposed bill includes penalties for fraudulent container redemption. Regulations have also been developed in other states to reduce fraud, and I can answer any questions that you have about that. The last thing I want to talk about is consumer demand and industry demand for these materials. Consumers and industry both want opportunities to recycle, as you saw in the video. Consumers want to purchase products made with recycled content materials, and they make those demands known to brand owners. Companies, as a result, have made commitments to include recycled content in their containers. I have 3 types of containers here that are all 100% post-consumer recycled plastic. This is Naked Juice, a bottle, and this is owned by Pepsi. Naked Juice is owned by Pepsi. This is Portico Spa. Their entire line of shampoos and lotions and everything are made using 100% post-consumer recycled bottles. And this is one of the line of Rainbow Light vitamins. They sell 6 million bottles of vitamins a year, and they've made a commitment to using 100% post-consumer recycled content containers. The U.S. EPA has told us that the emissions that are used to make these containers are about 76% less. And when you have reduced emissions, that means improved public health. So consumers want these products, and these companies want the recycled material, but they can't get the recycled material unless we develop more programs to provide them with the recycled material. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have, especially about programs in other states or other countries.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Collins, for being here. I believe she came all the way from California to be here with us, and we really do appreciate it. Again, I wish we had more time that we could spend. Ms. Pruitt, have you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About how many recycling plants are you referring to in the state?
That's a really good question, and I frankly do not know the answer. I don't know how many would be located in-state, how many would be expanding in-state, because it's glass, plastic, and aluminum, and they could choose to site several small plants or fewer number of large plants. We'd really have to talk to the aluminum, plastic, and glass industries to ask them how they would manage that.
Well, I know Tennessee is relatively small population as compared to some of the states that you mentioned, and I was just wondering, said create jobs and et cetera, and I was just wondering if it's just located in one particular area, how the people in the other areas are going to get there for those jobs and et cetera. So I was just wondering if there is a way of determining.
There certainly is, and I can work on that and get back to you. I can answer the question very generally, though. We've done some estimates and have found that about 500 redemption centers would be needed throughout the state. So that's the initial point of collection. That would be 1 to 2 jobs each at those 500 redemption centers. And then the materials would have to go to facilities like aluminum plants, glass, and plastic. And you have some of those in your state, but you would need a lot more with this kind of a program. And that's where we'd have to figure out how many jobs it would create and how many plants it would create for those.
Okay. Now, those that are already established in other states, would they be moving into Tennessee doing this?
Some of them would need to.
So
We've
that
already
would
heard
take
from
away
the glass
jobs
industry and the
opportunities
plastics
for people
industry.
in Tennessee.
Yeah, that they would need to. And then, of course, you have a very large aluminum recycling facility in this state. And I think they could handle the materials at that site, but would need to gear up with more employees and more throughput.
Okay. Representative Carr, you're recognized.